Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone had a good new year and a good holiday season. So I'm back with another genetic counselor interview today. Today it is with Gina Davis. She has a ton of great information to share. She has some different ventures in genetic counseling as opposed to the traditional clinical setting where she first started out in. And she'll mention the different companies that she's been working with, a company that she's created, and some new and upcoming ventures that she's working on. They're all very interesting, very exciting, and really demonstrate the versatility of this career. So it's super exciting. She has a ton of great stuff to share, and I think you'll really enjoy it.
All right, Gina, thank you for coming on today to speak with me. I just wanted to start out, would you mind introducing yourself, maybe a little bit of your educational background for genetic counseling and where you're at now?
Sure. So yeah, I was trained as a genetic counselor at California State University Northridge at CSUN. The program's no longer operational, but it was a great program. Just going back before that, I trained as a double major in biology and English at UC Irvine, and kind of knew I wanted to go into genetic counseling. So I worked as a medical assistant at a fertility practice for a year. Like had a gap year between college and grad school. Went to CSUN and then ended up my first job out of grad school was at UCSF, their Center for Reproductive Health, their IVF clinic essentially. And I had a kind of a split role with that and a research role in reproductive genetics. So it was a really interesting and wonderful opportunity that, I was really kind of going after fertility. I really knew that I wanted to work in reproductive medicine and in fertility. And so I kind of had to cobble together my own pathway to get there. But it turned out to be a beautiful experience.
Okay, that's great. And so you said you were in California for undergrad. I'm curious what led you to choose the genetic counseling program you did. And I guess I'm wondering if that has any factor or what factors did influence your choice for that.
Yeah, I mean, geography was a huge piece of it. I really wanted to go to Northwestern. At the time, I just really loved the program, and I thought that would probably, if I went anywhere else, it would have been Northwestern. Um, it's just that when it comes down to things, and you guys now have a different way of matching and everything, so it's a little different. But then I was waitlisted at the Northwestern program, and I was like, I'm waitlisted. Like, so it kind of was like I changed my whole. It was like a day, and then the next day I was offered a spot. It changed like how I felt about it. I was like, you know what, maybe this isn't meant to be. So I kind of took it as, even though CSUN was kind of like in my backyard, and it was like so much easier, and I could stay. I had a serious boyfriend who's now my husband, and it was just all those things that I was like, maybe it makes sense just to stay here, even though, because Chicago would have been a huge lifestyle change, and I was up for an adventure, but I don't know. I think it's like, honestly, I'm now this is kind of, I think all programs are great, and I think you're going to find the pathway that you're going to find as a genetic counselor, no matter where you go. So it just honestly didn't really make a difference to me. In the long run, I think I probably would have carved out my own path there. But, I think that all the genetic counseling programs are fantastic, and they just have different ways of achieving the same goal.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It is at least it's nice to have one factor taken out of the equation, which seems to be, a any kind of discrepancy in the quality of education, because they have the accreditation process where they're all pretty much going to give you the same thing as far as I understand it. But yeah, the process seems to have been pretty different, and even now with the matching, it's kind of out of your hands where you end up anyway. But
Yeah, and I think that it's probably smart that way, because honestly, like, wishing you were at a different program, it's just such a waste of energy. Um,
mhm.
or not wishing. It's not even wishing, but like just even imagining like you have a different group of, like, it's a small genetic counseling world anyway. You're going to be exposed to the same people ultimately, and you're going to have the same job opportunities. Certainly there's pros and cons to different programs, and they all and all the programs can probably offer different things, and it's great to have that experience in our field, but we're all going to bring those diversity of voices anyway, no matter what because we all talk to each other, and it is a small community where we can share those learnings. So I think that, yeah, if I could go back again, I wouldn't stress about it. I wouldn't stress about where I ended up. I mean, I'm really happy for myself. It was really great because, it was, it was really an easy transition for me. Being in California and staying in California it wasn't completely in my backyard. I did have to move, but it wasn't a huge difference for me. And in the long run, yeah, it didn't affect my life one way or another. I got to my local connections helped me work at another fertility clinic locally. And then that moved me right into the field I wanted to go into anyway. So honestly, I don't think I could have found another path and ended up in a new state, but it really didn't make a difference for me.
Okay, wow. I kind of have a similar experience currently because my undergrad at Pitt happens to have a genetic counseling program, which is, I guess, a little bit uncommon since there's only a handful of them. So that is kind of a weird factor for me, how I could potentially stay in the exact same place or, go to a variety of other locations next year, but we will see, I guess.
Yeah, and I actually experienced that too, because at UC Irvine, we have a program.
Hmm.
Personally, I did want a little bit more of an adventure than just being at my same exact, although I totally respect that. Like I probably I could have stayed if that had been my real option. But it was, and I did interview for that program, but it wasn't totally a fit for me, I think. And I think you just play it by ear. Honestly, once you get into a program, you're going to find your way. And I don't know. It's of course, it's going to have different life paths depending on which one you choose. But yeah, I think it's totally respectable to be able to stay at the same place, and like you've already learned a lot of your resources and things that you can. I don't know. There's a lot of pros also to being in the same place that you started.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned you're in reproductive genetics. So I'm curious what led you to kind of narrow down that as your specialty that you were interested in along your journey.
So yeah, I actually had the experience of knowing my specialty before I was positive in genetic counseling. I mean, well, actually, they kind of they went hand in hand because, I had been, toying with the idea of medicine. Like I definitely went in pre-med thinking like this is where I'm going to go, and had been really staying on the forefront of, like making sure that I was lined up and I had the right credentials for getting into med school. But I always felt like maybe I'm not meant for that. I'm not a hands-based person. I don't do well in the labs I don't do as well in labs as I do in like interpersonal communication. And I also just, I like the theory, but I don't necessarily like to do the stuff with my hands. So when I was in college, I was, taking a lot of courses and loved them all, but like didn't have that, real strong like need to go further into it until I took an upper division genetics course. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. I just loved every single day, everything I learned. And then the professor mentioned genetic counseling in context with IVF. He was talking about PGD. He was talking about pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is now testing, but whatever. And I was super intrigued. Like he was talking about how a genetic counselor could help a couple or a patient decide which embryo to transfer if they had a genetic disease in their family and they wanted to avoid passing it on. And I thought that is fascinating. I can't believe we're even there, now with technology. And this was, of course, back in, gosh, not even 2000. It was like 1999 or something. And so I thought it was fascinating. I'm like, I'm very interested in that. And so I really identified fertility treatment as the area that I thought was really interesting in genetics. And so actually a classmate of mine is also a genetic counselor now, a classmate in that same course, Kristen Borzak. I don't remember her new last name, but anyway, she was my classmate, my friend, and we both investigated genetic counseling at the same time. We ended up going to the same program. She was a year before me, so she's still a friend. And though I can't remember her last name, her married last name, but anyway, she ended up becoming a genetic counselor too. So we both really found that class to be fascinating. She went into prenatal, I went into reproductive medicine, but I think it's just like we both were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing how you can combine medicine and like philosophy and human like potential and science. It was really interesting to us, both of us.
That's really exciting. And it's also every time I have, get to speak to a genetic counselor like yourself and hear a story like that seems pretty similar to my experience. It's very reassuring that I'm going down the right path and makes me really excited to hopefully end up, in that field one day. So that's really great, that you kind of figure that out, especially since you had a different path at first.
Yeah. What are you, I mean, I don't know if this is about you too, but what are you interested in? Do you already have an idea of which direction you'd like to go?
I do. I have an idea. I'm definitely excited to get to try everything out through the natural rotation process, but I am interested in prenatal or some degree of the reproductive aspect of it. So um, I guess kind of similar. So that's definitely exciting.
Yeah, I know it's really the other thing is that we all kind of have to know everything. So,
Hmm.
especially in our area, we're real generalists. So we have to stay up to date on a lot of things because we're seeing people through the lifespan, and sometimes we identify something that we can really help that family, somebody else in that family identify some other risk. And so there's opportunities, whatever specialty you choose, to really help people in a lot of contexts in their lifespan. So I think I mean, and it really is a beautiful field. I could not love it more.
You actually reminded me of a little tangent question now that you just said that. So in terms of staying up to date on things, because I know with this field, it's constantly evolving, learning more things about it. But and I've heard that you obviously will have to stay up to date on what's coming out, which is exciting. To keep everything interesting and learn more and be able to do more for patients. But what exactly does staying up to date entail? Is it conferences or standard meetings or just literature that you're reading on your own? Like, how does that work exactly for you?
That is such an amazing question because I think that genetic counseling is knowledge management at its like peak. Like you really individual practitioners really have to be people that love learning, and they have to have an approach that works for them. Now, everybody has a different approach that works for them, but personally, that's kind of that's my thing, like that I love so much. And I've been obsessed with like productivity and making, making like kind of optimizing my work habits for since I was a kid. Like since I was like in junior high, I picked up Student Success Secrets as a book, and I followed that thing to a T. And then I mean, if you look at my bookshelves, you'll see like productivity books is like what I'm obsessed with. And so I actually have a whole thing I could share with you if you're ever interested. But I think that it's attending conferences, finding out what works for you for actual note taking, and keeping that knowledge fresh in your mind, and that you can keep updating it. Personally, I use an approach. That I recently, I mean, I've been kind of on the hunt forever, and I've used a lot of different approaches. Um, but now I use something that I learned about this guy. His name is Tiago Forte. He has a course called Building a Second Brain, that I am in love with. And he's written a lot of books. I have an internship program now through Advocate Genetics, my company, where we're starting to teach students that are going to become genetic counselors how to use this method, and how to kind of make most use of knowledge in your career, because it is a lot to balance. So for personally, I now use his approach combined with a lot of other things I've done in the past, but mind mapping works really well for me. Every time I read a new research paper, it goes into a mind map of that topic for me, so that I can kind of keep track of all the variety of things I'm learning about, in that particular question. I also I have a really solid system because of the Building a Second Brain course that I took. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's all of the above. You have to attend conferences, read stuff, talk to patients, talk to your colleagues, start to integrate all of those pieces, and every single day you're kind of reflecting and updating your knowledge. Now, not everybody doesn't have the same kind of emphasis on it, and sometimes people, that's not what they nerd out on. But since I do, I like to share that with other upcoming genetic counselors, because I think it's going to be a critical piece. Like this is the real human part of genetics that you can't get away from. Like even with our better IT and whatever, as we move more into kind of the information age, and things like robots start taking over, there's still going to be a place for that human connection, that we need to actually connect the two dots, like best knowledge management with interpersonal communication. I think is just a skill set that genetic counselors have naturally, and we're going to still need to supplement it, because we're undergoing a sea change in how much information is out there.
That's really, really interesting. I think that's also a really great point about how with this career and this field specifically, there's always got to be some component that I don't think you can really automate or take away completely, which is that connecting those dots, like you said. So I think that is a really great point and really exciting. And you mentioned advocate genetics. So the next question I had for you is basically what a typical day would look like for you, but maybe within that you could expand a little more on advocate genetics, your company, because I think I was looking into it a little bit before we spoke today, and I think it looked really interesting and really exciting. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I'd be happy to. So, I started my career again at UCSF, and fantastic place to work. I mean, I made so many connections, and it was such a great education. I became an IVF patient myself, just ironically, no idea that I was going to have to go through fertility treatment, but I was a fertility counselor that ended up going through fertility treatment. And through all that, a lot of years before I had my baby, but when I finally did, I was like, I could not sustain the lifestyle that I had been doing. Before that, I had been commuting like 2 to 3 hours a day, 2 to 3 hours a day one way. So if you can imagine, it was really a long drive. My husband, I was in my dream job working what I wanted to do, but it was insane. And I was like, I'm never going to see my baby if I try to keep this lifestyle up. So had to make the difficult decision. What do I do after I had my child, after I had my son? I went on maternity leave, and then I was like, I think I'm just going to have to either quit or try to go completely remote. And anyway, it wasn't an option to go completely remote and be full-time or even really strong part-time. I did 8 hours a week. And then eventually was like, I need to start my own company. I need to start reaching out to other fertility practices that need this help, but can have a remote genetic counselor. So I ended up building Advocate Genetics. And it was really just a one woman operation for a long time, and then started hiring because I got too busy, and got an office manager, and then eventually started having more genetic counselors join me. And now I'm actually not counseling. I'm taking a bit of a sabbatical from counseling and just running business operations and scaling up, because we're experiencing a lot of growth. And I also started a second company. And so I've just gotten really busy. So I've got to say that I took a totally different pathway, never intended to become a business person, but it kind of just happened naturally because there's this need out there. The second company that I started is Empower Donation. Now we're rebranding. It's going to be Empower with Moxie, but it is a company that's dedicated to education in the embryo donation space. Now, again, I was a fertility patient. Many fertility patients overshoot their mark because it's a really big gamble. When you go through IVF, you don't know how many embryos you're going to need. You don't know how long this process is going to take, and it's really unpredictable. So we made too many embryos, my husband and I. And when we were done, we were like trying to figure out how we felt about this, what we were going to do about this. And ultimately, it was really hard for me to hear the stories of fertility patients every day, who some of them were at the end of their road and really didn't have a lot of options. And at the same time, hearing donor conceived voices, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this decision, as you can imagine. But we ended up donating our embryos and to other couples. And so the first couple already has a child. They have a 3-year-old little girl now, and we're involved in their lives. And it's been a really interesting journey. And we want to really share, my co-founders and I all have personal and professional experience in embryo donation, both from the recipient and the donor side. And now we're trying to help people understand what these decisions are, so they can make decisions that make sense to them, because they're really a lot more involved than maybe they've at first blush might seem to be. And so we think it takes a lot of work to make sure people have all the information they need. And of course, because these are new genetic relationships, there's a lot of issues about untangling what is genetic identity, and what is genetic identity in a world where we have so much access to genetic information. And I mean, there's just a whole load of information that is just, it's going to be a continuous journey for me to unpack with our community. So my day-to-day is crazy. Every day I'm doing more business development stuff right now. And we have our internship program at Advocate. So I'm, usually working on something related to that. I'm usually working on something related to, managing our team and helping them getting the resources they need, because our team is growing and building, and we have an amazing group of genetic counselors at Advocate. But they need support, and we need to keep on, tweaking this thing or that thing to make it work better, so that we can see that, the patients, and they can get them in and get them all the best resources, keep them up to date, making sure they have all the best knowledge, but also are taking the time to, take care of themselves so they can be the best genetic counselors that they can be. So there's a lot there. Oh, and of course I'm homeschooling my children. So you're not allowed to come in here right now. Please close the door. So that's my day to day. It's crazy.
Wow, that's a lot, but that is so exciting. I know I'm personally I've developed like kind of an entrepreneurial mindset, and I'm really interested in that kind of stuff as well. Obviously, my passion lies more with the science and the genetics and the genetic counseling. But when I was first learning a little bit more about what genetic counseling entails, I learned that there's such thing as having a private practice or making your own company in some regard. And I think that's a really exciting possibility for somewhere down the line. So it's really great to hear that you've been working on that and had so much success with it.
Yeah, I think it's like I would say that we're still, we're really still in that startup phase where, the company has been around since 2013, but it's really just been ramping up, and it just changes every day because the needs change, people change, and what the industry has changed so much that, yeah, it's more just like, I think that I'm one of those people that I just like to experience new things. So for me, I'm like willing to take it on and like learn a bunch more new stuff and like see what happens and experiment. So it's been really fun because this is still still a field where there's a lot of pioneering to do. There's a lot of things that we can decide how do we deliver the best care to our patients, and what do those models look like? I think there's this gap between, like, there's a lot of clinical genetic counselors that are inside of like hospital settings and stuff. That's awesome. And then there's also this like lab-based genetic counseling positions that are also out there, but there's kind of this intermediate that hasn't been served, especially in the reproductive medicine area, that we're able to kind of use learnings from both of those areas. We have genetic counselors who have been really clinically experienced and really experienced on the lab side of lab operations, and I think that just helps us to kind of find the spot that helps patients and helps make them make sure that they're making informed decisions, and also allows the doctors to use the best of the knowledge, and not in a biased fashion. Like, we have no ties to any one genetics lab. We're just independent genetic counselors that are here to give the patients the best information.
Yeah, that is really, really awesome. That's so great to hear. I guess to shift gears a little bit, when you were more in the clinical setting in the past, I'm curious if you have any cases that come to mind as very memorable, which maybe taught you something about being a genetic counselor, or the role you served in how you interact with patients. Just anything that comes to mind off the top of your head.
Yeah, actually, it's so funny because I was just giving this, I gave a talk to my internship program a couple of weeks ago, and I was really reflecting on this. Like, how did I get into my genetic counseling? Like, how did I know I was there? How did I know that I arrived and I was a genetic counselor now? And I think it happened in graduate school. They had paired us with families that were that had a genetic disorder, and with the goal of it was a kind of a joint class with some other educational counselors, so it wasn't just genetic counselors, but the goal was to kind of get immersed into a family and just understand their daily lives. What did their daily lives look like? And it was a really fantastic opportunity. But when I was paired with my family, it was a really sad situation. The little boy had Hurler syndrome, and it was, at that time they didn't have as much intervention. They were still talking about enzyme replacement therapy trials, and it was a different time. I still think it's a pretty tough diagnosis, but it was a really sad time. It was, and I remember this family invited me into their home, and I think I was so intent on being a perfect genetic counselor, so intent on doing everything clinically by the book. Like, how do I ask this and phrase this and make sure that's not about me at all? Make sure that this is patient-centered and all this stuff. And I'm very good at like absorbing textbooks and like taking them in and like, trying them out. But I think this mom was so amazing because she wouldn't accept it. She wouldn't accept this like buttoned up version of me. She was like, I don't know, like just didn't jive with that. And she told this, well, she told me later. I think it was like I finally kind of relaxed. I kind of showed her a little bit of myself, and she's like, there you are. I remember we were in a restaurant. She's like, there you are. When I first got to know you, I was like not really interested in having her, over again. But she's like, but now she's like, you're a person, you're in front of me, you're a person. And like, she's like, just relax, be you. And she was a really young mom, but I think she could see something. Like she was, I think she was having to face a really life-altering diagnosis in her family, where it really shook up her self-identity, her marriage, her relationship as a parent to both of her kids. I think she could see that I needed some wisdom, and she gave it to me, like, just relax and be yourself, and don't stress about being perfect. And honestly, since then, I've not stressed about being perfect, and I'm really fully human with patients. And I think that they like the authenticity. I mean, I could read a bunch of textbooks, and I of course have read all of them, and like I really do take into mind like all the case counseling strategies and all that stuff. But it really comes down to, they want somebody there that's human, that can understand what it is to face something that's confusing to them oftentimes, with somebody that is human and can just, see their humanity too. And I think that it required me to be vulnerable. And now I'm vulnerable. Honestly, as you can see, like, and I'm an open book about a lot of things. And I think it's because I was taught this by patients, that they needed that in order to really face how profound these situations are in their own lives.
That is a really, really great example. I think authenticity goes a long way in every part of life, honestly, but that's, I guess, something that you just have to learn through your experience of how to interact with these patients. And I mean, I can understand, especially as a graduate student, before you have your experience on your own as a counselor, you only know your education, I guess. So you just think you have to do it a certain way. And I could see how it would definitely be appreciated just to be a little more authentic and let that come out.
Yeah, I find that, I mean, of course they want to make sure that you know what you're talking about, and that you have, but yes, to really allow yourself to be you, I think is something. I mean, I think that I was granted this gift really, really early in my career. I'm so glad that she taught me that. This patient taught me that. And because we had multiple experiences, it wasn't like a single one where I had to piece together a bunch of like clinical interactions that I was then like, well, maybe I should be more authentic. No, it was like we had multiple experiences, and the immersion into her life really helped me to see that. And she had a really fantastic genetic counselor, Michelle Fox, who at UCLA, she's fantastic. I don't know if she's still practicing, but she taught us a lot of amazing things. And I think that, maybe she passed on this wisdom, and maybe that was just in who she was. And this patient was able to recognize the differences between us. I don't know. But either way, I think it's an incredible lesson for a young genetic counselor to have, is that authenticity goes a long way. And I think also as we diversify the workforce, like that's going to become more important too, because I think there's been like this kind of traditional model of what a genetic counselor is that is changing, and that we are hoping changes, because we're not all the same, and we shouldn't all be the same.
I think that's a great point, especially with the way that the field is going to go, as they hope to increase it in terms of diversity and size, itself. I guess different patients might actually want different kinds of interactions and different experiences with counselors. So that could also be a great way to have diversity in terms of just the way that the counselor would interact and serve the style that the patient is really looking for.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question I had for you is just be, if you can summarize in one thing, what the most rewarding part of being a genetic counselor would be.
Oh my gosh. It's like there's so much here. There's so much to explore. I think it's because it's a lifelong journey that you get to experience everything. You get to experience joy and real humanity, and being there with people, that they're being really open with you, and that you can touch them in a way that's really unique. in a time where they might really need that help. So for my heart, it's really healing to be that person and to be in that role and have that opportunity. But it's more than that, because it's like it fully allows me to be fulfilled in my actual pursuits, and to also have a family, and to have a life. That was what pulled me into genetic counseling more than into medicine, is because I could really see the very big differences in the lifestyle that I might achieve, and I wanted to have a life beyond just my job. So I think it's just like kind of for me, it was perfect. I mean, I'm very drawn to the humanities and philosophy stuff, but I'm also very drawn to science, and I wanted something where I could exercise all of that, and I found that in genetic counseling.
Yeah, it seems like that definitely is a perfect combination you've achieved. And I know that's kind of similar goals and philosophy for myself in terms of where I hope this is headed. So that's really great to hear. And then on the flip side of that question, I'm curious what the most challenging part of your career has been in terms of just what you've experienced.
Yeah, I think burnout. I think it's a lot to ask of one person too, in a daily job, to always be like, hey, let's be your best self today, every single day. And to be on top of this massive amount of literature that's constantly changing, and opinions are constantly changing. And we also have this responsibility to society, that to be help guiding it in a way that's really smart, that's inclusive, and considering all people's opinions and helping them make difficult decisions I think it's really easy to steer the ship the wrong direction. So I think that just knowing that you have that responsibility, it can be a weight, to have all of that. So I think burnout is a particular thing. I think for me, I've really, I never really took the thought that I was going to have like a break in my counseling career. But this last year, where I've had a team come on board and really be able to take the reins with that, has given me so much more perspective, and allowed me to see like that I think all genetic counselors sometimes need a sabbatical, so that they can explore different parts of themselves and come back fresh, ready to go and ready to deliver in, because this is a very challenging field. I would say that this is not for people that want to learn something and then just kind of do it the rest of their lives. No, you're going to be learning forever. And so it's for people that like to learn and like to continue to innovate and work on themselves.
All right, absolutely. And in terms of for a sabbatical, or when you're still fully engaged in practicing every day, and maybe being on more of the clinical side where a lot of those heavier things do come up, are there any strategies you would typically employ that help you manage your responsibilities in terms of the burnout, and helping that not overwhelm you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I'm not to keep going back to the same principle, but I really think that there are some lessons we can learn from people that have been looking at knowledge management in a way that is more that fits our lives. And so I would really encourage people to pick up a book by Tiago Forte. This guy is amazing. And he's coming out with his actual official Building a Second Brain book soon, I think, but he has 4 others that are all amazing. I think it comes down to meditation, reflection, giving yourself time to integrate all that you're learning, not to just keep on jumping from one subject to the next subject to the next subject. And I've done that. I'm guilty of like trying to know it all. I wanted to know it all early in my career to help as many people as I could. And I knew that I needed to know a lot of things. And so I was really the kind of person that would burn myself out. And I did. I think, I mean, I was lucky that it did. I mean, I was lucky in the sense that like I eventually found people that could help me, but I really beat myself up to get to this point. And I don't think it needs to happen that way. I think there's new ways to really understand how we can work with this information overload in a way that makes sense. So if you haven't read anything by this guy, which I think he's really I think he's underappreciated right now. I think he's going to change the world, but pick up a book by Tiago Forte, or you can join my internship program if you're curious. I think that ultimately it's going to come down to finding ways to live our best lives within this information stream. And there's a way to do it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm definitely going to look into that a little more. I think that that's some advice I've never heard in terms of the specific strategies. But that's also something I'm typically interested in terms of how to manage those things and looking for new ways to improve in that regard. So thank you a lot for that advice. I'm definitely gonna look into it.
Yeah, and actually, since you have other prospective genetic counseling students probably listening, you guys also are welcome to apply for Advocate Genetics. Is going to be doing another spring internship program. Right now, we have 6 fantastic genetic counseling prospective students that are in it, and we're doing really great work where we're I'm teaching them, we're teaching them, not just me, we're teaching them some of our strategies for counseling in reproductive medicine. We're going through research papers with a genetic counseling eye, how to understand research papers and to translate that science to lay people, and how to translate that in different contexts. So we're doing a journal club. And we're also learning about the principles of the building a second brain method, and how to apply those for a genetic counseling lens. Because I really think this guy, and other strategies too that I've learned over the years, but I think I'm just such a big proponent that I'm like, hey, if I can get this guy more work and get people buying his stuff, because he's going to change the world. So I feel like I've become a little bit of a, do you call those people evangelicist or whatever? Anyway, I'm definitely definitely marketing for this guy, not intentionally, but I think that there are some things that we can learn. And so I'm really eager to share what I've gotten out of this with other genetic counselors that are going to be in the field soon.
Yeah, for sure. That really sounds like a great opportunity. I'll be sure to put your website in the description for the video, and people can definitely find it that way.
Yeah, and I have I'll give you another link too, because I do have an application process for the internship if people are interested. I'm just this was our first version, was our pilot. This was that we've just been experimenting with, but I think it's been a success. And we haven't done the surveys yet for our current interns, but once those are there, I'll put them live too in our Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook profiles and things. But yeah, I mean, if anybody is interested and curious, they can follow us on at Advocate Genetics on all of social media channels, and we'll be having applications opening for our new internship program soon.
Perfect. That sounds really great. And then the last thing I have for you is, you've offered a ton of great advice through this entire conversation, but specifically in terms of, I guess, prospective students going to genetic counseling programs. I'm curious what advice you would have, and if I can clarify it a little more, I'd say maybe if you have an overall piece of advice in terms of maybe a mindset or an attitude to take into the graduate program, that would be great. And then for anyone that's in the application process right now, applications have already been due. So the next step would be graduate school interviews. And I'm curious if you have any insight on how to handle those as well, specifically.
These are fantastic questions. The first question, mindset. I think going in and realizing that no matter what your experience of grad school is, you are in this incredible opportunity to learn and ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can and get the answers that you want, because ultimately you're advocating for your clients right there by getting the best knowledge base that you can and making sure that you're taking advantage of those opportunities. Now, it's stressful. Like all school, I think that when we come out of college, we're in this mindset of like, we've been competing and like, we've been like, let's showcase what we can do and all that stuff. You're going to have to drop that, because it's going to be about how do you learn, and all your classmates are going to probably be some of your best friends for the rest of your life. I mean, maybe not, I mean, you don't talk all the time, but you can count on them for anything. If you call them up and you need some help because they're an expert in cancer and it's been a long time. So I think going in with this mindset that like, I'm in this incredible space, I can be a sponge and I can be friendly and I can just see what opportunities are there, is really important. It's not a competition anymore. It's not a competitive space. I think that at least in my undergrad experience, it felt like a competition the entire time. Like that was drilled into us, test scores and all this stuff. And it's just, that's not what we need anymore. We need diversity of perspectives to give rise to a lot of ways to think about genetic information and genetic counseling. So I would say the mindset would be, go in there and share your true self, be authentic, and and also realize that this is an incredible opportunity to ask questions and to gather, this wonderful network around you, because you're going to need that network through the rest of your career. And not just for your own purposes, for the purposes of serving your patients and serving society at large. Like, all that is like, I think we're so lucky that genetic counselors in general are just good people. And so you're also surrounded by amazing people. So it's amazing. And just being grateful for that, and just kind of like respecting what that is. I think if I could, not that I feel like that's how I did handle it, but I think that I've seen different approaches where students were a little bit more like nervous to go in there and be themselves. And I think that we need to encourage more students to take on that perspective while they're in school. The second question, in interviews, I mean, honestly, you just want to be yourself. They want to know who you are, and you want to know what the program is like. And just, I don't have any specific strategies other than to say, reflect, spend some time really thinking through your goals. One of the things in my internship program we talk about is the 12 problems. There's this, and again, this is building a second brain thought, but there's, I think his name is Richard Feynman. He's a physicist who had this idea that if you look through life with your like list of 12 problems in front of you, you're nodding, you might have heard this before, but there's, you have like a list of 12 problems that you are very curious about, that you keep coming back to in your mind. Every time you get a piece of information, if you kind of refocus it back on your 12 problems and see how it will help one of your 12 problems, you can have so many ideas, and you can take your life in a new direction, and you can come up with solutions other people wouldn't come up with. So you're really creative. I think having a good sense of what yours are, the things that you really care about are going into interviews, will help sharpen your focus on, is this a program that really matches me? And it will also help them to get insight into who you are, and do you fit in what their program is trying to do in the next couple of years. Because I think the programs are all going to be, they're looking for good students, but they're also looking for a specific mix of students that's going to help kind of move their culture forward, and create the community that they're hoping to create.
Those are really, really great answers. I appreciate that a lot. I definitely love the theme of all these different ways to improve your mindset and think of those problems in a different way. So I think that's going to be some great advice to anyone who watches this video, and I'll certainly take a look at that myself, because I think that would be really helpful.
I've got to say, I'm a little bit like, this is me geeking out and then going, oh my gosh, are people going to think I'm crazy? I do the same thing in my internship program. I'm like, you guys are just getting the real me. I'm just being honest about all the stuff that I read and all the stuff that I think about. But it's a little woo-woo, I think it helps to, I think for me, it's like acknowledging that side of me has only helped me to go, okay, like, feeling very confident in any decision I make from now on. Like, some of my 12 problems are, how do we empower families that come together through gamete donation to live their best lives? And it's like, everything comes through this lens. Like, does that empower families? Will that help people? Okay, if it does, then I'm gonna work on that opportunity. And I can see a lens, and it makes everything, all of my pursuits after that, makes easy decisions. Like, everything is an easy decision because I have a principle that it comes through that filter. And so, yes, I think it's a little bit of myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally geeking out on this YouTube thing. But at the same time, I mean, why not? This is who I am. And I do think about things this way. And I think a lot of good genetic counselors really are in touch with who they are. And that helps their patients to understand, because a lot of times people are working through not only a genetic diagnosis, but reframing a genetic diagnosis through the lens of their own life and what it's coming to. So it's that counseling thing kind of has to come in, and you kind of have to know yourself before you can really feel confident that you're helping walk other people through that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I can totally appreciate what you've been saying, and it's, first of all, it's authentic, like you were talking about. So there's that. And I've definitely, about like a year and a half ago, I got really into the mindset and personal development kind of realm myself. And I can totally appreciate what you're saying. I have been able to appreciate the power of it, and it's something I've been interested in as well. So I think it's been great.
Well, thank you. I know I feel
Yeah,
like I indulge myself a little bit having these conversations, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, like let's change the world. I think if you can change your, if you can understand yourself and you can understand your perspective in the world, you can do so much more. So yeah, I think that's great. A great journey you've been on too. And yeah, and thank you for doing this. I think this is an awesome way to share what I think a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do, to interview lots of genetic counselors and see what the field really is today. I think it's a great idea to share this knowledge widely.
yeah. Thank you so much. That was exactly the idea, and why I wanted to do it. And I really appreciate people like you, genetic counselors like yourself, taking the time and being accessible to people that are interested. Makes a really big difference. So thank you.
No, my pleasure. Well, is there anything else? Did you have any other questions?
No, that was pretty much all I had for today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for taking the time and sharing so much great information. All right. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will let you know when I put this up.
Awesome. Take care.
You
And
too.
let me
Thank
know
you.
if you are interested in anything with Advocate. Let me know because we do have opportunities coming up. So,
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
okay, take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
Have a good day.
So once again, that was Gina Davis. I will put the information for her company, Advocate Genetics, in the description. So feel free to check that out. She has a ton of great resources for current prospective genetic counseling students. So be sure to check that out and stay tuned for the next video.